So let's talk about the last piece, practice profitability. Because all of this is well and good, but if we're not profitable, we won't be in business for very long. We need to be responsible and spend less than we make. And an ideal practice overhead is between 50 and 60%. And what I see when I'm in consulting with practices is anything from 60 to 80 to 90% overhead. And what happens is the dentists are the ones that don't get to take a salary home because everyone gets paid first. And so you guys that are new graduates or soon to be new graduates, it is so important that you control your overhead and you control your spending. Do not go out and buy a new Mercedes and a new boat and a beach home the day you graduate. Spend less than you make. The ADA and the AGD are very concerned about the amount of debt that students are graduating with. It limits your possibilities and it limits some of the opportunities because you have this anchor around your neck of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 worth of debt. So we're very concerned about it. So controlling the overhead. You know, when you come out of school with $500,000 worth of debt or $400,000 worth of debt, and then you want to buy into a practice or you want to start a practice or you want to build a practice, that's another $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. That's a big nut to crack for a long time. And it's important because this is your future. And I want you to be able to do the dentistry you want to do. And if you've got this anchor around your neck, sometimes you get in the trap of getting on that treadmill and just drilling, filling, and billing to make ends meet. And so the more you can control this, the better. Enhancing your productivity. How can you do that? How can we increase our productivity? How can we be more efficient? You know, there are only so many hours in the day, and there are only so many days in the week. You can't work 8 days a week. You can't work 30 hours a day. So how do we be very productive when we're in the office? And then how do we protect our investments? There's been a downturn in the economy since 2008. So how do we protect our investments and keep those there for when we're ready to retire? You know, some of you are just starting out on this journey. Some of you are midway through this journey. And some of you are at the tail end of this journey. So how do you protect your investments? Well, this graph gives you the ideal practice overhead. Like we talked about today, you know, the team is your greatest asset. They're the greatest potential. They're 25% of this pie. The lab is somewhere around 10%. Dental supplies are 5%. Marketing's 5%. Office supplies are 2%. Other stuff is 15%. So how can we increase profitability? Well, one of the ways we increase profitability is we produce more. So if we produce more to increase our profitability, what do we have to do? We have to collect more. That's number 2 on your handout. You've got to produce more or you can collect more. Well, in order to collect it, you've got to produce it. The third way to increase profitability is you have to write off less. Well, any of you that are participating providers know that the reimbursements aren't necessarily getting higher. The reimbursements are getting lower. So we're fighting that battle. The fourth way to increase your profitability is you've got to reduce your overhead. Well, you can only do that so much because you've got to staff for the gross. But your overhead's based on the net. And so, yes, there are some cost-cutting ways. You know, maybe you can combine appointments. Maybe you can do some quadrant dentistry so that you don't have to set up the treatment rooms as often or as many times and run sterilization. You know, maybe you make more efficient hours. You know, there's lots of ways to do this. Who in here knows the average cost to set up one clinical area for a patient, one treatment room for a patient? So if it just for an average that it costs $30 to $40 to seat one patient, that's significant. That's significant. The fifth way to increase your profitability is to spend less than you make, which means save money. Let's just look at these graphs, and I don't want you to get bogged down with the numbers, but just play with me for a minute. Let's pretend that your practice runs on a 60% overhead, and let's just pretend that your monthly production is $100,000. So that means your pre-tax profit is $40,000. Let's say that you're a participating provider and your adjustments are 10% for that month, okay? Which means that your adjusted production is $90,000. So you now need to do 133% of what you were doing, so 33% more of what you were doing to make the same pre-tax profit. Dentistry is not making another widget. Dentistry is a high-touch profession, and there's a high overhead attached with dental procedures and dentistry, and we can't just make another widget. If your overhead is 60%, and a lot of people are fighting to get to the 60%, and you produce that same $100,000, your pre-tax profit is $40,000, which, by the way, team members in here, that doesn't mean that your doctor makes $40,000 a month. That means that that $40,000 goes back into the practice for taxes, for investments in the practice, in equipment, other future growth, all of those things, the doctor's salary, yada, yada. It doesn't mean that the doctor takes home $40,000. This fee adjustment of 20%, so let's say on average you adjust 20% of your monthly production, now you have to do 200% of the volume to equal the same net. This is the trap. We think because we're busy that equals profitable. It doesn't. Busy does not equal profit. Let's look at 70% overhead. The same 100,000, 30,000 is the net or the profit. 10% adjustments, you've got to do 150%. So you got to do 50% more volume to make the same. This is why it gets crazy some days. And the days and the months that you feel exhausted because you've seen 1,000 patients, this is why. And you're like, but I'm not getting ahead. Exactly, because this is killing us. If we look at that 70% with a 20% adjustment, and by the way, these fees the adjustments are pretty conservative. Some plans require you to write off 30%. You've got to do 300% of the volume to make the same. So in dentistry, any adjustment comes off the bottom line, and these adjustments are not dollar for dollar. They make a huge impact on the team, on our other patients, and on ourselves. So how do we look at these things? What should the doctor's production be? Well, ideally, we would be engineering the schedule every single day, and we would have blocks in the schedule of the procedures that we want to do more of. So whether we want to do more crowns or endo or partials or dentures or implants or whatever we want to do more of, that we would strategically place those blocks so that we plan for it so that it can happen. The hygiene production, like Linda said, 33%. Go back, look at your hygiene production. Is it 33%? Is it higher? If it's higher, then maybe the doctor production isn't high enough. Why is that? Is the team co-diagnosing for you? I know they can't legally diagnose, but they can talk and they can show a patient a picture. And are they supporting you? The doctor can't be in every room all day, every day. The key to tapping into the potential is to using your team members to their fullest potential and helping them to grow and reach the next level and expand their duties to what the law allows in your state. So the hygiene production, are they setting the stage for case acceptance? Are they co-diagnosing? Are they doing the periodontal therapy in your practice? A good measure of your perio is 1/3 of your total hygiene should come from periodontal procedures. So go back and look at that. I've seen everything from 2% to 40%. How much of your hygiene total production is coming from perio, the 4,000 codes? Your office collections. Where are you with your collections? If you can produce it, you've got to collect it. This is where the team comes in. 98%, 98 to 99% is what you should be collecting. If you're not, why? Maybe we need to look into Care Credit, Wells Fargo, City Health, to make it easy for patients to say yes and to make it fit into their life and their budget. The continuing care effectiveness and the scheduling efficiency, utilizing those team members. You know, ideally less than 10% of your schedule would be open time or broken appointments or missed appointments. Obviously, the lower, the better. But there are going to be emergencies. There are going to be things that patients can't avoid. There will be true illnesses. The continuing care effectiveness. Most offices run between 50 and 55% effectiveness. Ideally, it'd be 85%, so that 85% of your patients in your hygiene continuing care would be seen on a regular basis. Most often it's more like 50 or 55%. Well, if you think about that 1/3 of the doctor treatment comes out of hygiene, sometimes that's why the doctor's chair is slower, because it's not coming out of hygiene like it should be. So looking at these things and asking your accountant, asking your consultant, asking your coach, seeking out people that are doing what you want to be doing will all help you make your practice a masterpiece. And looking at the services you provide. The oral DNA is a great way to expand some services. Invisalign, Velscope. I mean, there's lots of things coming down the pike. This is another slide about accounts receivable. If $1 is charged out today, in 91 days, that same dollar's worth 73 cents. In a year, that same dollar's worth 26 cents. So today, not tomorrow. Collecting it today, not tomorrow. So we work hard. We want to be compensated for that. Another way to look at the profitability is to systemize and automate any procedures that can be automated. So that high touch, high tech part of the practice. Well, one way to do that is to use the billing services, electronic billing. Dentrix has e-billing, Softent, EagleSoft, all of the services. Use those services that can be automated. Use electronic claims. It surprises me how many offices don't use electronic claims. How many of you in here are using MDE, Mercury Data Exchange? Anybody? MDE, okay, one. You like it? Love it. He loves it. Why? Because they automate some of these services. They provide real-time claims. So the patient can be sitting right in front of the financial coordinator, and that financial coordinator knows exactly what the insurance is going to cover. There's no billing for $5 or $10 or $20 down the road. So for $29 a month, that's the best $29 a month you'll ever spend. So write down why MDE, like why, the word why, like WHYMDE.com. We use them in my office with Dentrix Claim Shuttle, and they provide an awesome service for a very small amount of money. And they save a lot of time, right? And they prevent denied claims. They also can report eligibility to you. Ways to increase your profitability: you decrease the overhead, you increase the production, you can increase your fees, you decrease your adjustments. Making sure that you're submitting fees every year to the plans that you're participating with. They're not going to tell you to update your fees. They don't care that you get a higher reimbursement. Make sure that you're updating those whenever they allow it. You know, looking at these services, Invisalign, TMJ, sleep medicine, having your team co-diagnose for you, and then treatment planning and utilizing the technology, the cameras, oral DNA, all of these things to use at your disposal, using those resources. And your hygiene production, you know, like I said, oral DNA, looking at these periodontal treatments, Arrestin, Atrodox, and helping the hygienist learn co-diagnosis. This is another tip. Doctors, write this down. Spend 30 minutes a month with your hygiene team and go through some pictures and explain to them why you would recommend what you would recommend. And synchronize your team so that if you're recommending a crown and every time they look at the tooth and think you're going to recommend nothing, there's a big gap between what you would recommend and what they're seeing. Help them see what you see. Go through photos, and photos are a great way to do this rather than doing this in front of the patient. But photos are a great way to do this. Sit down with them and go through some cases and show them what you see. And I guarantee you they'll start doing it, and they get it. Because yes, they cannot diagnose, but they can talk. And using that technology, the intraoral camera. Tapping into your potential, using your team members, expanding your services, streamlining your systems, scheduling effectively, incorporating technology, really creating the masterpiece practice that you deserve. I want to close with this last quote. Our finest moments occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. It is only in such moments propelled by discomfort that we step out of our ruts and search for different ways or truer answers. So my hope for you is that you find different ways today and truer answers at this meeting, and you go back and make your practice a masterpiece. Thank you.